Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the God's Good Table live Wednesday afternoon show. Today, we're going to talk about good fats and bad fats with my friend Sally Fallon Morell. And along that line, I'm just going to put in a plug for my favorite fat, Simply Ghee. This is A2A2, totally grass-fed. You've heard us talk about them before. Bev and Nancy do a great job of sourcing very clean pasture-raised butter from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And from that, butter is made and they come out with their beautiful ghee. It comes in original and A2A2, and I use it for everything from frying eggs to just mixing with coconut oil to take every day as a supplement. So give it a try. We have a code, which will be in the show notes so that you can get a discount and order directly from our website. So there we go, Simply Ghee. Very appropriate because today I'm talking with Sally. Hello, Sally.
Hi.
It's so nice to do this with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've known Sally now for, my son Mason will be 23. So it was soon after that. Yeah. Almost at the very beginning of Weston A Price Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get started, do you want to just give a very brief synopsis of what brought you to do the work that you do?
Well, it's a long story, but I grew up in a family of foodies. I think my parents were the original foodies, and we always had butter and eggs, and we had a nice, rich diet. So I continued that way with my family. I was into French cooking, and I just cooked that way. And then I read Dr. Price's book when my oldest was about a year old, and that kind of confirmed what I was doing. And this is a time when this low-fat propaganda was coming out. It was becoming more shrill, and they were starting to say that this is how you should feed your children. And I just knew that wasn't right.
Yeah.
So then I got the idea to write this book, Nourishing Traditions. I teamed up with Mary Enig, the lipid expert. Mm-hmm. And once the book came out, we thought, well, we need something else. We need an organization that just keeps people abreast of what's going on. So along with Tom Cowan and my husband, Jeffrey Morell, we founded the Weston A Price Foundation. And the rest is history.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. We're now 24 years. We've had a conference every year. We publish a journal. We have a huge website and very popular podcast. And
yeah,
here we are.
Yeah, here we are, 24 years after the very beginning. But as I've told you in the past, and I've told others, Nourishing Traditions is my nutrition Bible. And I'm very thankful that you wrote that book. It's definitely more than just a cookbook. So at the heart of what the foundation was founded upon to teach, lipids is really probably the biggest piece of that.
Yes. We say without qualification, the biggest problem with the modern American diet, and this is worldwide now, is the industrial seed oils. Mm-hmm. And we are very pleased that this is coming to the fore. You now hear a lot about seed oils and ultra-processed foods, right? Yeah. But these are bad. And we have been saying this from the beginning, so we might not be attributed to us, but this is what we've been saying for many years. You need to get off these seed oils and go back to using the healthy grass-fed animal fats, which, of course, the dietitians, clutch their hearts in pain when you talk about cooking in lard and eating lots of butter. But this is what we need to do, and especially to have healthy children.
Right. So let's talk a little bit then about the history of the seed oils and where they came from. I'm trying to bring up photos. There we go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That's a great example of some industrial seed oils.
Yeah, I can't either. So it started back in the late 1800s. A company called Procter and Gamble was trying to figure out what to do with all this waste cottonseed oil. And they were adulterating olive oil, for one thing, with it. But they figured out how to harden it by a process called partial hydrogenation. They were making trans fats, and that's how they made candles. So they were putting the cottonseed oil into candles. Well, electricity came along starting around 1900, and people weren't buying candles anymore. So what were they going to do with all this partially hydrogenated cottonseed oil? And they said, well, let's feed it to the people. I mean, that's a great thing to do with it, right? So without any testing or idea of what kind of effects this might have on people's health, they came up with Crisco, which means crystallized cottonseed oil, and they started to market Crisco. And they did it with very clever advertising, very clever propaganda to demonize the competition. What was the competition? Well, it was, first of all, lard. So the advertising made it seem vulgar to use lard, and that good, pious housewives would never use lard. And then they also create the impression that you should feel guilty if you use butter. And I've had lots of people tell me that they really couldn't embrace our diet until they got over this feeling of guilt for using butter.
My mother was one of those people, by the way.
Well, fortunately, my mother was kind of a snob, and she wasn't going to use these products. She was going to use the real thing.
Yeah, and that's important. And now I can imagine how possibly that long ago, before the age of people, well, the food system had never really changed that much because there wasn't a food industry. So maybe people just hadn't really given it any thought. Maybe they
didn't. In fact, America was known to be a nation that ate a lot of butter.
Yeah.
And not all, but lots of European observers, including, what's his name? Can't think of his name. Who wrote about America so in such depth. They described Americans that we put butter on everything, on porridge, on vegetables, on our meat, on our sweets. Yes. And we were a butter eating nation, and we were a very handsome, healthy nation.
Yeah.
And tall also. And of course, we were a dairy industry. We were a dairy nation too. We had lots of raw milk and butter, and we also ate organ meats. The doctors told people to eat organ meats.
Yeah.
We took cod liver oil. So all of these things that we are advocating, old-fashioned things, were the way we ate probably up to the First World War.
Yeah, and then things really began to change. I remember too that the first time that people really started talking about heart disease was in the 1920s.
That's right. The first recorded myocardial infarction, the first recorded heart attack was 1921.
Yeah.
And up to that time, the only heart disease was basically heart failure if you'd had a very bad case of typhoid fever. But the heart attack was new. And the heart disease, the heart attacks increased as the butter consumption decreased. So that tells you right there it wasn't butter causing these heart attacks.
It tells us that.
We've just been subjected to relentless propaganda to get us to stop eating animal fats.
And yet we need them so badly. Can we talk about some of the reasons not to eat the seed oils? What are some of the problems specifically?
Okay, well, these are extracted from seeds. You can't just press a seed and get these oils out. They're extracted at very high temperature, high pressure. They use hexane, which is gasoline, basically, to get these oils to come out of the seeds. Lots of chemicals. And what you get are what they call polyunsaturated oils. These are liquid even in the refrigerator, and in the body, which is a very warm temperature, they're very unstable and they break down. They start to oxidize things. That's not good.
Mm.
And they get built into your cell membranes. They cause your cell membranes to be loose and leaky and floppy. They break down into aldehydes.
Mm.
These are very small molecules that are sort of like embalming fluid. In fact, one of the aldehydes is formaldehyde. And it's no wonder that the undertakers these days are saying we don't need as much formaldehyde to preserve these bodies anymore. It's because
Because
there's already your body's already partially pickled from the vegetable oils.
somebody once made a joke towards me many years ago, before there was the Weston A. Price Foundation, and you might have even still been in France. I don't know, but
Okay.
I was I was getting into health food, natural food, and they made the joke about, oh, don't worry about me. I'm going to be preserved forever from all the chemicals I eat.
Yeah,
I
right.
thought it was very funny, but I didn't think it was funny at all because
No.
it's not natural and it's not good. And Dr. Price was beginning to realize way back in the early 1920s, if not before, that,
I'm just reading some of his old papers, and I
oh,
guess I had forgotten this. He started his tour, visiting the primitive people in 1931, but these papers are from 1920 to 1930. Before he started his tours, and he was talking about patients that he would see that had excellent teeth and come in from the rural areas into the city, and their diet changed, and they had, dozens of cavities. And he was able to reverse the cavities by putting them on the cod liver oil and the high vitamin butter oil, giving them milk, which would have been raw milk, and having them eat butter. And he reversed their tooth decay. So
that's
even
amazing.
before going into his studies, he had already seen what he could do for these patients just by changing their diet.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I think you know that it all fascinates me. And
Yeah.
the more I learn, the more I know I don't
Yeah.
know. I need to
Right.
learn
Well,
more.
I have to say, it really opened my eyes. I thought he came to these conclusions after he started going to these primitive people, but he'd already done a lot of research and published it.
Okay. And Price Pottinger has all of those papers archived.
And they are on the internet. They are, they were in dental journals, so they're still out there.
Okay, good. That's really neat. So I also remember seeing a chart. I didn't look for it, but it might actually be in one of your talks that I have on file, of the processes that a seed oil goes through
Yes.
to go from the plant to the table.
Yeah. Well, see,
And
when it comes out of those seeds, it looks like a brown gunk, thick, brown, smelly gunk. I mean, you would never touch it. You would never dream that this could be something that people would eat. And then it goes through this refining process where it's bleached, it's deodorized. In fact, the deodorization process is really, really hot. And these oils are already extremely fragile to begin with. The liquid oils are fragile, and it's just one insult after another. Then they deodorize them, and they're actually white. They bleach them, and then they add a little bit of yellow color to them. So you think, oh, it's like sunflowers or butter or something. But
wow.
the stuff is just disgusting and toxic, and it's cheap. And
Mhm.
that's why the food industry likes to use it. This is really why the fast food places in the 1980s switched to vegetable oils rather than tallow.
Mhm.
So the original McDonald's were fried in tallow, and the fries were delicious. Okay. I'm not saying they were a health food, but they weren't bad for you. But now, now when kids eat these fries or grown-ups, they're eating cancer sticks.
Yeah.
I mean, is it any wonder we have so much cancer today?
Yeah. And I remember, as an aside, we all went out for dinner in
Yeah.
Tennessee, in
Yeah.
Knoxville. And
Yeah.
we were all happy because we saw duck fries on the menu.
Yeah.
So a bunch of us ordered them and then realized afterwards that they were
We
just
found
fried,
out.
yuck, and then drizzled with duck fat. What
Yeah.
a maddening,
Yeah.
deceptive thing.
Yeah. That was maddening. That was a real eye opener.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
which
I just wrote an article about cancer, and I found a lot of studies from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And what they did was they gave rats or mice either cancer cells or a carcinogen, and a tumor would grow. Okay. And then they would give the mice different kinds of oils or fats. If they gave them the polyunsaturated omega-6 oils,
the
the
heart
tumors
healthy
grew and
oils.
metastasized, okay, and killed the rats.
Wow.
The heart healthy one, yeah. If they
Yeah.
gave them saturated fat, which I think came from lard, I can't remember, the tumors did not grow. If they gave them conjugated linoleic acid, which is a fat that we only get in the fats of grass-fed animals, like grass-fed butter, tallow, and so forth, the tumors shrank. Now, I think that's an important thing for parents to know, especially the parent of a child diagnosed with cancer. You must not,
Yeah.
if you want that child to die, give them vegetable oils. If you want that child to recover, give them grass-fed butter. But of course, nobody's telling them this. They're forcing them into chemotherapy and all sorts of terrible things. But no one is telling them the key piece of advice they need to recover from this cancer. And we have known it since 1980, almost 50 years.
And nobody gets this information.
Unless they're following the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Which we keep trying to get that word out, and
Yeah.
it's so important. I talk to a lot of parents about the effects of vegetable oils and food additives on their children's brains, and I understand
Yes.
that the saturated fats are really important for a healthy brain function, but kids are getting the vegetable oils and all of the junk besides that, and they can't.
Or they're cooking in vegetable oils.
Yeah,
Another thing that we get from all animal fats that we do not get anywhere else in the diet is a fat called arachidonic acid. And 11% of the brain is arachidonic acid, or is supposed to be. But if you're not getting that in your diet, you're not going to have a brain that functions properly.
right. Wow. I also find it interesting that with saturated fat and cholesterol, which of course are highly demonized, it's funny, except for it's not, that what's called heart healthy is actually heart damaging. And
Yes.
what is actually heart healthy is you get it back and forth. But you being a farmer and me having been a farmer, one thing that we notice is that the heaviest fat, the most dense saturated fat, is around the organs.
Yes, around the kidneys, yes. Yeah.
And this is because it's fuel, right?
Yes, and also around the heart, that's
Yeah.
saturated. And this is in a cow. Cow's not eating saturated fat. The cow's eating plants, which have
Right.
unsaturated oils in them. What the cow does is saturate those oils, and because the cow needs that,
And the people do too.
and the people do too. And what people don't realize, they talk about, saturated fat. Think of saturated fat going down your kitchen drain and all this, but in the body, it's warm.
Right.
And fluid, and exactly the way the fats are supposed to be around your cells. If you eat too much polyunsaturates in the body, they're warm. They don't pack together right. They're very, very fluid, and your cells become leaky and floppy, and there's not a good integrity around your cell membrane.
Right. And then saturated fat and cholesterol, this whole thing just drives
blows
me
your mind.
Yeah.
Cholesterol, it's so counterintuitive that they take a substance that the body makes. It's made in every cell of the body.
Yeah.
It's very high in breast milk. because the baby needs a lot of cholesterol, and demonize it.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that is because cholesterol is something that's easy to measure in the blood. It's one of the first things they figure out how to measure. And because it's not in plants, it's not in vegetable oils. So what did they do? They demonized it to get people to consume cholesterol-free vegetable oils. I mean, it's brilliant marketing, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
But it
But
doesn't make
it's lies. It's complete lies. Yeah.
Yeah. And I spoke with a woman at a conference the week before last whose total cholesterol is at 130, I think, and her doctor has her on a
Statin.
cholesterol lowering, on a statin, and she doesn't think it's a good thing. She understands that. She and I talked for about an hour. I sent her home with lots of brochures and a heart journal.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems so counterintuitive to me that if the body makes cholesterol, and if you understand all the roles of cholesterol, and I want to
Yes.
talk about all those roles,
Yeah, hormones for one thing.
yeah,
But
then
yeah,
if
but you know why? You know why? So any doctor who's in a practice, most doctors are in a practice,
Mhm.
they get a bonus at the end of the year. And the bonus is dependent on how many statin prescriptions they write. This is in cardiology, okay?
Yeah.
And you might say, well, I don't believe in this. I don't care about my bonus. But the thing is, every other doctor in that practice, his bonus is based on whether you are writing these prescriptions.
Yeah.
So there is tremendous pressure on these doctors to prescribe statins to everybody. My father, when he died, he was on 2 statins.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I'm seeing. And first they prescribe the statin, and the next year you go in, they prescribe the blood pressure medication.
Yes, of
And a
course.
year later, you're diabetic
Yeah.
because the statins affect your pancreas. And so then they put you on metformin. So those 3, statins, blood pressure, diabetes medications. And we had an employee who worked at a morgue, and she said every patient that came in there that was on statins was on the other 2. They were all 3 drugs. So it is, it's the slippery slope. Once you get on those statins, then they've got their victim, and they push you to the other drugs.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. When George had his heart attack, now almost 5 years ago, the first thing that we did once we left the hospital was get rid of that statin.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to act like the doctor saying to people out there, get off your statins. You've got to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
But we did, and we got him off of the blood pressure medication immediately as well. And actually, he was doing fantastic when he walked out. I was putting raw butter on food.
Yeah.
I ordered bland food, and then I'd slather it with raw butter that I picked up at the farmer's market, and salt. And I
Plenty of salt. You need salt.
Yep. So when he left, the doctor couldn't explain why George was doing so well, and his heart was fine. So that's a whole story that I need to write up. But our friend, who is also our client and a medical doctor, she didn't always feel that way or agree with what we did, but she was acting as kind of a liaison for us with the doctors. And she came in one day at lunchtime and she said, Maureen, put some butter on his food. And I lifted the lid and it was swimming in butter. So we were good. But it's frustrating because people are only hearing one thing and it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about what are some benefits to butter. What are some reasons that we should be consuming butter?
Well, it is the fat in nature for the growth and development of all mammals. Nature doesn't make mistakes,
Right.
How can there be anything wrong with it? 2 of the things I mentioned, arachidonic acid and conjugated linoleic acid. They are unique to animal fats and especially grass-fed animal fats. And they are essential for our health. Saturated fat, which is very good for us. Another thing in butter is butyric acid, which you can't really get in any other food. And that's very important for colon health. So we actually produce butyric acid in the colon through the fermentation of the foods, but in butter, it's ready-made. It's right there. And it's very, very important for our health.
Yeah.
Short chain saturated fats are very good for metabolism, for the thyroid gland. Butyric acid is actually critical for thyroid function. So yeah, there's just so many good things in butter.
And then
plus the fat soluble vitamins.
Right.
You get that. Vitamins A, D, and K2.
And let's talk for a moment about what is important about those.
So Dr. Price found that the real commonality in all of these different diets, whether it was Switzerland or the South Seas or New Zealand or whatever, was that they were very high in three vitamins A, D, and K. And we get these from animal fats and organ meats. And he felt that they were the basis of any healthy diet. So the nice thing about butter is that they're all three there if it's grass-fed butter. And the vitamin A in butter is more easily absorbed than from any other food, which is good. Yeah.
And there's no vitamin A in a carrot, I always like to say.
No. What's in the vegetables and the fruits is the carotenes, which some people can transform into vitamin A, but typically European females of European ancestry cannot do that.
And yet an animal can, which is another reason.
Yeah. So the cow spends her whole day, if she's on grass, converting the carotenes to vitamin A, converting the K1 to K2, and converting the sunlight into vitamin D.
Wow. And
I call her a step-up transformer.
I like that. And then there's also activator X.
Well, we now think that this is the vitamin K2.
Yeah.
And K4 in the form of vitamin K. And it does all the things that Dr. Price said activator X did. So
yeah.
One of the things vitamin K does is it regulates calcium and phosphorus. Calcium and phosphorus are supposed to be in our teeth and our bones, in the hard tissues, and not in the soft tissues. If they're in the soft tissues, you get creaky joints, you get stone formation, you get hardening of the arteries, because the artery clogs, people think, oh, that's cholesterol. No, it's calcium in the arteries. And what vitamin K2 does is regulate where the calcium and phosphorus go, making sure it goes to the hard tissues. So it makes nice hard teeth, nice dense bones, and keeps it out of the soft tissues, including the arteries. And in fact, the Dutch researchers who kind of discovered all this is about 25 years ago, said, this is great, this will prevent heart disease. But the only problem is that this K2 is in cheese and butter and eggs, and so we can't eat it.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course. Our dietary advice is so screwed up. Well, what about some other fats like, here's one, olive oil.
So olive oil is a plant oil, and we recommend using it for salad dressing. But we have just discovered something. And I discovered this because I took some olive oil that I knew was completely pure. I knew the people who grew it, and I put it in the refrigerator, and it didn't gel up. It stayed liquid like a vegetable oil. Yeah. So I got to looking around on the internet, and I found some research where they found that the amount of omega-6, and that's the bad guy, varies from 3%, which is okay, up to 27% in olive oil, depending on the cultivar, depending on the type of olive. It has nothing to do with whether it's cold press or extra virgin or anything like that.
Okay.
So we have completely revised our um, recommendations for olive oil. The olive oil should pass the toothpick test, and that means that you put it in the fridge and it gets kind of semi-solid, and you put a toothpick in it, and the toothpick should stand up straight. It should be solid enough to hold up a toothpick.
Yeah.
So
And
the Greek olive oil tends to be the best if it's pure olive oil.
I'm working on an article right now about truth in olive oil because, as you are aware, there's so much adulteration.
There is, but the Olive Oil Association, they don't require the amount of omega-6 to be put on the label. As I think they know this. I think they're hiding it.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff about extra virgin, cold press is kind of a distraction from the real issue with olive oil. It should be mostly monounsaturated, and yet a lot of it isn't. A lot of it's up to a quarter, more than a quarter of omega-6.
Wow. And so it's hard to know. You can't just go to a store and read labels and
No,
figure.
it won't be on the label. No.
No, we have to
Use our shopping guide, because we did the toothpick test. Any oil in the shopping guide had to pass the toothpick test.
Yeah, I have that right here, guys. Our members, Weston A. Price Foundation members, get this shopping guide.
And you can order it even if you're not a member.
Yeah, thank you. It's available to anyone. And I'm often looking things up, and people will ask me, what about this? And I'm looking it up to see. But I use a lot of olive oil like you do, mayonnaise, salad dressing,
Yes.
that kind of thing. I've even made the olive oil ice cream. I used to do that quite a bit.
Well,
My kids thought it was gross, but I liked it. So
yeah.
I used to make
But
that.
again, you have to be careful. I mean, it's just like in the restaurants, you ask for butter and they say, we have whipped butter. Is that okay? Well, it's not okay, because they mix oil with the butter and whip it up. So.
Yeah. There's a popular brand that I won't name of butter that comes from Ireland. And they have a soft butter.
Yeah.
And I'm really dubious about the purity of that and what's in it.
Yes.
So I don't use that. Costco sells a grass-fed butter from New Zealand, and I buy that for my cooking and that kind of thing. But then I like the raw butter otherwise.
Yeah.
And then we've got other fats like coconut oil.
So coconut oil is not an animal fat. So it won't have those fat-soluble vitamins in it. It won't have arachidonic acid. It won't have CLA in it. But it does have some good things in it. The short-chain fatty acids, especially lauric acid, very good for your health, good for energy, good for your thyroid gland. So it is a fat that you can and should include in your diet.
Yeah. I actually just had a tablespoon before I came upstairs to sit here for this interview. I mix it with ghee. And just as in your Eat Fat, Lose Fat book that was so many years ago,
yeah,
I do try to take a tablespoon of that at least in the morning. I forgot until today.
Gives you energy. My substitute for coffee is a tablespoon of coconut oil, a tablespoon of molasses, and fill your mug with hot water. And then I add a pinch of powdered ginger. And that makes a great substitute for coffee.
I'll have to try that. I've never tried that. Yeah, I've tried a lot of other things. I'm drinking tea right now, by the way, but not coffee. That's interesting. I do definitely find that it helps with keeping satiated and having energy.
Yes. It's very good for your thyroid gland.
Yeah, and I need that. So the more I remember to take it, I go in spurts where I take it for a long time and then I forget. But I've been pretty careful to make sure lately that I'm getting my fermented cod liver oil, which is another oil from animals that carries beautiful nutrients that our bodies need. But as Dr. Price, as you mentioned, Dr. Price found that it seemed to work synergistically with the high vitamin butter oil, or
Or just plenty of butter in your
yeah,
diet.
or
A
ghee.
source of
That's why I
vitamin K.
use that. Yeah, yeah. So I do that every day. Um, and then there's the fat. Now, a lot of people are not going to use lard for religious reasons, but
It's a great fat, though. We pretty much cook everything in lard,
yeah,
unless we're actually frying, and then I use beef fat or tallow. In
yeah.
fact, I made oyster fritters for my husband for lunch, and I used tallow for that.
Oh, that sounds good.
Mhm.
I sometimes fry meatballs in duck fat,
Yeah,
and
and duck fat is your best source of, well, duck and goose fat is your best source of vitamin K.
yeah, okay.
So I usually do duck fat fries, goose fat fries.
Yeah, good. But each of these excellent fats have different properties
They
that are
do. And Mary Annig always said you want a variety of fats. Um, Butter, coconut oil, olive oil, duck fat, goose fat, lard, and tallow.
yeah, good. I see a comment from one of our regular listeners about the Amish butter that comes, you can often find it in a grocery store. I'm just going to mention this because otherwise I'm going to forget. But I see these two, the rolls of
Yes,
Amish butter. And what I know about them is that they're not necessarily from a good, clean
yes.
source.
Not necessarily grass fed.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I don't buy those. They're so
No, I don't
expensive,
either.
and I'd rather spend the money on something that I know I can trust.
Yeah.
But it does taste good because
Okay.
because it's butter.
Yeah.
Everything's better with butter. Julia Child used to say, what
She said, if you don't like cream, use butter. I think that's
yeah.
what she said.
Yep. And then more butter, and that's what I do. So the gist of it is, as with everything nutritionally speaking, I think we need to go back to the old food ways and eat the way people used to eat
Yes.
and eschew the modern things, in this case modern industrialized seed oils that actually cause harm.
Very much so.
Yeah. And instead embrace the traditional fats that carry so many of the very important nutrients that our bodies need. And you mentioned, well, you alluded to the fat soluble activators.
Yes, that's the fat soluble vitamins.
Yeah, that
One
without,
thing I forgot, I was talking about arachidonic acid. Your
yeah,
brain is 11% arachidonic acid. One of the things your body does with arachidonic acid is make endogenous cannabinoids. We make marijuana in our bodies out of animal fats, and we have receptors for them and everything. I often say the natural state of the human body, well nourished, is to always feel high. And when
yeah,
people are not eating animal fats, not getting enough butter, they don't feel good. They feel depressed. They feel anxious. They don't have that mellow, positive attitude anymore. And
right.
that's a result of the dietary guidelines.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say high, you don't mean fuzzy headed. You mean feeling good and feeling
Yes,
happy and feeling
yes,
energized.
yes.
And that's,
And motivated. See, the
yeah,
problem with the marijuana from the plants is it might make you feel good, but it takes away your motivation.
yeah. And I've seen that when people are using it
Mhm.
heavily recreationally in particular.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
definitely seen that. So that's something to be careful about, and to be watching out for. But for me, well, the fats are a critical piece of feeling good, of functioning well, and of building healthy, strong babies,
Yes.
which I think they really helped me a lot with my childbearing years. So, um, and yes, you can make your own butter from raw milk. Tracy's mentioning that. That's wonderful. From grass-fed animals, you can make your own butter.
Yeah,
And it,
you can use a Cuisinart. It's really fast.
yeah, or a Vitamix or whatever. It is super fast, and then just rinse it very well to get all
Yes,
of the
you want to
trace.
make sure it's really rinsed well.
Yeah, yeah. So let's not be afraid then
Don't
of,
be afraid of the animal fats and don't feel guilty. You're worth it. God made these fats for you. So
yeah.
you can be healthy and feel good and optimistic and not depressed and so forth.
And these are the fats that our bodies will utilize to build a strong, healthy brain, to build
Yes,
all of the hormones and the building blocks for healthy bodies. So, there are many articles on the Weston A. Price
yes,
Foundation
yes.
website. I always do plug the foundation, but especially here as we're talking about fats, the late Dr. Mary Enig wrote, I don't
Know
know.
your fats. Yeah, she wrote a book called Know Your Fats. Yeah.
Yeah, and it still is available. Um, a good book to read. I read that one many years ago. So do your own research, of course, but I urge people, as I know Sally, you do as well, to walk away, run away from those vegetable oils. I don't even I don't even give them away if they enter. I have some actually for demonstration purpose,
Yeah.
not for consumption. And I was, I guess, cleaning things out one day, and somebody said, "Why don't you send that to the food bank?" And I was,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
nobody should be eating this stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm
Right.
going to contribute to that. So, well, Sally, it has been a very informative conversation, and I'm really grateful for your time and your knowledge and your sharing. I am so very grateful to you for all that you do and what the foundation does. And I just can't thank you enough. So I
All right.
will,
Well, thanks for having me and uh, stay tuned. We're going to
yep,
be
for more.
announcing a conference soon. So, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Follow the website, become a member. It's only $40 a year to become a member, and you get the Wise Traditions journals. And I have a stack of them over here, but the Wise Traditions journals are wonderful, the shopping guide and all of the brochures and all of the wonderful information. Definitely, I urge all of you to take a look at the website and look up butter, look
Yeah.
up fats, anything. There are lots of just excellent articles. And I must say too, my friend May Myers is writing many beautiful recipes.
Oh,
Lots
good.
of so I've been enjoying her recipes. She's really creative and she's not afraid to use those good healthy fats. So check that out. And that's it. We hope that all of you will choose to like and subscribe and share, please. And we'll be back next week. I think we're on Ask Me Anything next week.
Okay.
So thank you again, Sally. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks,
And
Maureen.
you're welcome. And we'll see the rest of you next week too. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.